We are good to go, Brian.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our December 16th North Middlesex Council meeting. Once again, we're electronic due to COVID. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call. I believe everyone is present. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If you have any, please email Jackie and send it to her. So the minutes, the first business minutes of previous meeting from January 2nd, the regular meeting minutes. Is there any questions on that? Seeing none, I need a mover for the minutes. Councillor Moyer and Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried, thank you. So right off, we need to go into a public meeting, and I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Keogh, Councillor McClinchy, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving into into a public meeting. And for the purpose of notice of public meeting for minor variance of 2130 Parkhill Drive, 1370863, Ontario Inc., the daycare. And so we're looking for Stephanie to begin. Stephanie's there.
Mayor
Jackie,
Rock, yeah,
yes.
We do need to have a brief recess, and that's just for the if there's any members of the public who wish to access the meeting, that we have that 5-minute recess to allow that.
You're right, I'm sorry. So we will take 5 minutes and then we'll start with Stephanie on that. All right, it does look like we're back, so I just want to make sure that we have Stephanie there. And
Here, yep.
okay, and Fiona, you're there. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin. Correct, Mike? Are we waiting for anyone, Mike, from the public? You're muted. I can't.
Yep, we do have a Terry in. We'll just,
Okay.
if Terry would like to identify themselves.
Terry, could you just identify yourself, please?
Oh, Terry Hodgins, just listening to the meeting tonight.
Okay,
Thank
no
you.
problem. Yep, okay, no problem. Okay, Stephanie, if you'd like to begin, please.
Sure. So as council will recall, the lands are subject to zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3/2020, which was approved by council on February 5th, 2020, which resulted in a daycare center being added as a listed permitted use, in addition to the permitted uses in the parent general commercial C2 zone. Additionally, the lands are subject to site plan application SPA 5/2020. In reviewing the engineered site plan drawings through the circulation process, it was identified that a queue line was not being proposed, whereas section 6.34, being parking lot and driveway standards, requires that for a daycare, 1 parking space per 5 children capacity plus queue storage of 1 space per 5 children capacity be provided. The applicant has advised that maximum capacity, the facility will be able to accommodate 32 children and 8 employees. And as per the North Middlesex zoning bylaw, section 6.34, the daycare would be required to have 7 parking spaces plus queue storage of 7 spaces for drop off and pickup purposes. And the applicant has provided 12 parking spaces and 1 accessible parking space and is seeking relief from the required queue line spaces as the size of the land and the location of the existing building does not provide enough space for both a queue line and two-way traffic. The applicant has also advised that parents schedule their drop-off times between 7 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. and their pickup times between 3 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. And the staggered drop-off and pickup times is anticipated to alleviate the need for a queue line. Additionally, the applicant has proposed 12 parking spaces and 1 accessible parking space, which is nearly double the required 7 parking spaces in order to offset the need for a queue line. The applicant also advised that due to COVID-19, only 1 family is permitted in the center at a time. Staff reviewed the application against the 4 tests of a minor variance and are of the opinion that the variance is considered minor in nature. It is an appropriate use of the land and it maintains the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. Notice of the application has been circulated to agencies as well as property owners in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act. And at the time of writing the report, no written concerns or comments have been received from the agencies or the general public. So it is recommended that the application be granted and that council resolve that section 45(1.4) of the Planning Act does apply for minor variance applications made before the 2nd anniversary of the day on which the bylaw was amended. Thank you.
Mayor
Brian, you're
Roth is-
muted.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Thanks, Stephanie. Fiona, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
She's muted.
Yeah, can you unmute?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm already running a daycare center in London, and we have a parking lot. Granted, it's a little bit bigger than the one in Park Hill, but we have more students. Our license is for 48 children. And we have 7 staff, I guess, plus other part-time staff. But anyhow, parents are arriving at different times in the morning and at pickup time. And I feel that if you feel it's going to be an issue in Park Hill, we can almost come into kind of not a treaty, but some kind of like, agreement with parents that, okay, this is your drop time, this is your pickup time, and make sure that nobody is coming kind of at the same time, or maybe like 2 or 3 families at the same time. And I get that maybe it's a little bit different in Park Hill. It's going to be maybe a little bit busier in the mornings. However, I feel in working with the families that we're going to be able to really come to, and I'm going to say, like, this is what we need to do in order for this to work for everybody in the community. We don't want any neighbors complaining about, cars queuing up on the street and at the stop sign. I completely understand. And I feel that we're always going to be, working with the families, and they're going to say, this is how it is. Your drop-off time is going to be 7:10, and the next family will be 7:20. And if we can work through anything that, any situation that may come up. If we need to be there a little bit earlier to accommodate somebody, and we need everything in writing, absolutely. We're all about, accommodating every family, every child. And that's the way we kind of do things in London. And I'm sure like somebody has to be early, I'm at the center early. If somebody needs to stay later, somebody is there later. And I'm completely committed and dedicated to working with everybody to make sure that this is a good fit for the community and for our center. And anyhow, I know that we can work it out. And I honestly know that there's not going to be 15 families arriving at the same time. I just know it. And I'll make sure that that's not the case. So.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. Right now I'm looking, is there any comments from the public? Mike, are you getting anything there on your end? I'm seeing no comments from the public, correct? All right, council, or pardon me, committee of adjustment, questions from the committee? No questions from the committee? All right, you have a recommendation in front of you. Jackie, would you read that recommendation out, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
I am so sorry. If Stephanie can read that recommendation.
Sorry,
it's
Jackie.
off my page. Sorry, I should have been prepared for that.
Stephanie, could you read that out for us, please, a recommendation?
Yep, absolutely. So it is recommended that the application for minor variance MV7 2020 for relief from section 6.34 being parking lot and driveway standards to permit the establishment of a daycare center without a queue line, whereas daycare facilities are required to have 1 parking space per 5 children capacity, plus queue storage of 1 space per 5 children capacity for care be granted, and that council resolve section 45 1.4 of the Planning Act, which does apply for minor variance applications made before the 2nd anniversary of the day on which the bylaw was amended.
Okay, so there's any questions from committee? No questions? We need a mover for the recommendation. Councillor McClinchy, seconded. Councillor Keogh, all in favor? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thanks, Fiona. Thanks for your efforts.
Thank you very much to everybody for being so supportive, especially Stephanie, and in just working with me and Mike through this whole process, and Jonathan, all of you. I really appreciate, and the mayor, everyone in Park Hill, and I'm really excited to come to the community. Thank you very, very much. I'm
We
very,
look forward to it, Fiona. Jackie, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, so just for the benefit of the public and the applicant, so there is a appeal period that does apply from the date of notice of decision. So I hopefully will get that notice of decision prepared tomorrow with the 20 days on it. And if there is any member of the public seeking a copy of this decision, they need to make a request in writing to myself. But otherwise, that will be coming out in the next day or so.
thank you.
Great, thanks, Fiona. All right, at this time, I do need a mover to go out of Committee of Adjustment. Mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Cornelison and Councillor Nickel, all in favor? Carried. So our next order of business is the delegation, and it is Tony Vanderhook, and it's a request for exemption on water line connection fee. Tony, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So who wants to begin on this? Tony, I think it'd be appropriate if you did.
Okay, we have a new build here at 34526 Cassidy Road. I talked to Jonathan and initially talked to Glenn Bullock, but there was water on the property, and a number of years ago the house burned down and the water wasn't used. And then since then we've started building again, and we ended up waiting for water because of these meter pits apparently, and the installation of them should be done with a meter. But anyway, I had to prove that water was on the property, which, you know, is you can visually see that there's a turnoff valve at the road. And I did find a bill, which I think is you people have there. I supplied of a water bill from 2003 for this property, which proved there was water here. So my understanding was that half of the right to connect then would be deducted, but I feel that I should have no right to connect because the water's already here. I presume a right to connect means if there's no water on the property, then it would cost you $8,200 to tap into the main line. Is this correct?
Who wants to answer that?
Yeah, that's correct, Tony. 80, I think it's
So,
8150. Yep.
Yeah, so for $8,150, if I need a new connection, somebody would tap into that main line, and then I would have a shut-off valve, and we'd go from there, and then spend another $3,000 or so on a meter pit. Now, these meter pits, is the municipality going to try and put these in every rural situation?
That's
That is
correct.
the- yeah.
Yeah, that's correct, Tony.
So just as a comparison here, like, so I've got water. So I don't feel I should have a $8,000 bill for tapping into the line that's already been tapped. It's kind of like buying a car in 1985. I do know it cost $5,000 to connect or in around that era, 1985. But if I buy a car in 1985, spend $5,000, drive it for 10 years, park it for 10 years, and then want to drive it again, go to the license office, and they say, well, you got to give me $5,000 again. This is virtually what you're asking for here. So,
Okay, and I think, Tony, go ahead, Tony.
No, I'm just trying to lay it out from this invoice and the situation here. Like, you know, it's obviously cheaper than a well. If I got to pay $8,000 to connect to the line, but I'm already connected. So, you know, nobody has to come out and tap into this main line. It's already been done. So you're asking me to pay for it twice.
Okay, thank you. Council members, questions from council. Jonathan Graham, you want to speak on this first? Go ahead.
Just to try to complement the discussion through your worship, Jonathan Lamb, this chime up here, but this is in relation to the policy that was brought before council about a year ago in terms of water service and connections, which did outline a sunset clause. And although I can respect that, you know, the analogy of the car situation, The gap in terms of the implementation of that sunset clause is the cost of inferring infrastructure fees and charges associated with that. So there is a clear gap between when Terry was on the line and when he's requesting to come back on the line. So for your consideration tonight is the delegation is seeking to relief from the policy that was adopted by council previously, just so I can frame the question a little bit more for you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor Cornelison, you have your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rob. The sunset clause, as I understood it, was in that particular case, the frontage was paid, but was never hooked in. And so then we implemented a sunset policy. However, in this particular case, the frontage was paid and the line was hooked up and it's still there. So I don't know how the sunset clause applies to this particular situation, given that the hookup exists.
So the sunset clause was set due to the fact that every different former township dealt with it different, right? That's where this all stemmed from. And Tony and I had a conversation about this, and no issue. The issue of it is it's been 17 years, right? So the sunset clause has a 5-year term. After the 5 years, it's basically right to connect, and that's what was passed in the bylaw. So it's just to level the entire municipality and treat it all as one. So it does apply. I mean, it could be 17 years, it could be 30 years, 40 years, it could be 6 years, but it still applies the same.
Okay. Councillor Moyer.
Thank you. I'm under the understanding, same as Adrian, and I thought there was, if they could bring proof that they had paid for a hookup, that would waive that fee at that time.
Within the first year. After that, it's a 50% reduction to year 5, and then year 6 is full again.
Who made this sunset clause up?
That was, okay, Tony, an answer to that policy came through to council and the policy was approved by council. There seems to be misunderstanding here right now, but that's who approved that policy, Tony. Deputy Mayor Cornelison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Clearly, I did not understand that policy at that time because I would not have supported the bylaw as it is being presented today, because I really struggle with people having to pay numerous times for a water hookup that has already been paid for. So I really struggle with this one, and perhaps I have responsibility in not reading the bylaw properly, or perhaps I wasn't listening properly. But I really struggle with this one. I really, really do.
Jonathan Graham, go ahead, Jonathan.
Again, to try to clarify a little bit more, if we liken this to a utility service, which water, when we provide within the municipality, is a utility service. It's not an essential service, but it is a utility service. They morph and change depending on what side of the fence you think of. But if I go to Rogers and I decommission my Rogers account, and I go to Bell, my Rogers infrastructure still exists on the side of my house, correct? So if I go back to Rogers, I get charged with an installation fee again. The right to connect is subject to a little bit of the ability to get to that. That's the framing of it, and that's why we're having the delegation today, is that there's a gap in terms of the interpretation, and we want to make sure that it's understood in full.
Well, then I think the municipality has to bear a little bit of responsibility in that, because what you're describing here is a similar incident that I had with Hydro One on my particular property, in that the transformer existed, but I did receive a bill for a delivery fee, which in this particular case, I think the owner of that property should have received a bill as well for water infrastructure. So I think the municipality bears some responsibility here, because if I had not paid the hydro bill as was presented to me, then the transformer would have been removed, and then yes, I would have been responsible to have it reinstalled and all those costs associated with hooking back into the hydro line. But since I received the bill, which Hydro One was obligated to send me, that issue didn't apply.
And through your worship, Tony, unfortunately, you're helping us hash out some of these dialogues that we'll be moving ahead with in the number of years. And we'll consider this in future, but the deputy mayor, then if the context of that framing is that should we be charging people infrastructure charges if they don't turn water? And we know we have a gap in terms of components of other townships that have had issues like this, where they haven't had an infrastructure charge. How long do we honor that for? And I know we're getting off topic because that'll be coming in the new year in terms of what our water policy looks like, but that is information that's very valuable to staff in terms of where we go next.
Okay, I yield to Councillor Moyer.
Councillor Moyer.
Yeah, this question, I guess, for Tony and one of the Jonathans. Did you request a shut off on that property, Tony?
Not that I recall. I had to come up with do my due diligence here to come up with a bill, which, in the move and all that, and trying to find paperwork, and accounting's not my forte, if you will, but I did find a bill from 2003, which just totally astonished me. So I come up with that, and then I did mention to Jonathan, I came up with this bill to prove that I do have water. So now come up with some kind of proof that there's documentation telling you to not keep sending me bills for water, or because the property was vacant. There was nothing on the property, but we still could have had a hydrant or whatever at the time. But I do believe when the property burnt down, and it was about this time of year and a real cold night, that they probably just shut the water off because the house was going down. And nothing was ever said about that after. And water wasn't required after that either. But I do realize that, by not using water, you're not adding to the infrastructure, but I'm not taking from it either. So
yeah. Wouldn't there be some
my
sort
initial thought, and I'm willing to put these pits in, I guess, only because I have to. I still don't see how everybody in the community is going to be in favor of spending around $3,000 for these pits, but I do appreciate the fact that water is disappearing, and generally between the road and the house or properties or whatever. But still, I feel this 8150 shouldn't apply here. If somebody wants to build a new house on a new lot and have to tap into that line, that's where this should come into effect.
Yeah, whose responsibility is it, Jonathan, to, should we not let the property owners know when water is shut off going into the property?
Yeah, and we currently do, through the mayor, we currently do, Councilor Moore. There's a lot of communication now, and I'm sure there was at the time, but it wasn't documented at the time. Irregardless, yeah, it's been 17 years. The current policy and bylaw states 50% as of, I think it was November. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just one of the bills I
Keel.
found. I'm not going to say that that's the last time I got a bill. That's just a bill that I did find in 2003. So, it could. I honestly can't remember when the house burnt down. I'm sure it would be in fire department records or something like that. But
okay, Councillor Keel.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like a little clarification on that. And Jonathan and Tony can probably help me with this. Initially, if there was water that run into the house and then the house came down, and was the curb stop shut off valve still in place to that house?
Correct. It was. Yeah.
So,
it was at Tony's place.
So in order to hook up now, curb stop is already in, that saddle is already hooked up to the line. So it's just a matter of connecting Tony's line to that original curb stop. Is that right?
That's correct. With the addition of the meter pit for the metering purposes, but that is correct.
the curb stop.
Okay. Go ahead, Tony.
The water's already connected to the house.
Okay.
The line never disappeared, and when we relocated the new house, that's when I knew where the line was. We had dug it up before. So,
Okay.
and it got hooked into the house with, my understanding was the meters were still going to be at the house. I had no idea these meter pits were coming into effect. So that's kind of what I was waiting for here, was a meter pit to show up at the house. And then we ended up, finding out that everything's going to be at the road now. But the curb stop was always there. The line from the curb stop to the house was always there. Nothing ever changed.
So in essence, it really is not a new connection. Is that right?
No,
It's
Okay.
an existing connection that hasn't been utilized
So,
for 17 years.
do you think we can supply some relief to Tony here?
Which is the policy is the 50%, right? So we did forward think, and that as people come back on and these situations present themselves, there was relief from years 1 through 5, and then year 6, it's a clean slate. So the policy did take that into account.
Not really, because I've already paid. It's already been paid for once.
Right.
And
Now,
I've already heard from people that are drilling wells now, only because of possibly this situation and the increase in water pricing.
right. So for council, if you are considering there's this break on this, then also we need to look at that policy, because we are going against the policy the way it's written. If you don't like the policy or you want to change, that's another issue as well. That's something that we have to look at instead of just going against policy. Go ahead, Jonathan. Jonathan Graham.
Through your worship, part of our 2021 agenda, hopefully through the visioning session, or at the very least in the first quarter, this policy will be coming back up in examination of our new wastewater water rate with a legal opinion attached to it as well. So it will be coming forward.
Okay, perfect. So that's coming forward for council to look at again. That is good news. That's important too, because we want to get rid of these situations. Deputy Mayor Finelson and then Councillor Moyer.
Well, given that Jonathan just mentioned that I'll be coming to council for further discussion, should this matter then be deferred until such time?
Are you making that a motion?
I believe, yes, I am. I'm making that a motion.
Okay, first of all, we look for a seconder. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Kehoe would second it. Now, discussion on it. Councillor Moyer, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering, we're looking at really discounting or forgiving half of the $81.50, $4,075 is what we're looking at. Is that right?
Yeah, give or take or more.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
That was already established.
Okay, is there other discussion on this motion? Any other discussion? Councillor Moyer.
Just in the meantime, with Tony sitting there with his connection is the pit is being put in and that's being carried on.
His connection's in. Your motion is to what? To let this sit and not charge him at this point until we look at this policy. Is that right, Deputy Mayor?
My motion, Mayor Rob, was that the meter pit, if that's required, then that's required. But I'm not referring to the meter pit at all. What I'm referring to is the $81.50, the reconnect charge. And if that policy is coming up for discussion in January for council, then my motion is to defer that particular aspect of this delegation until that time.
Okay. Are you good with that, Jackie?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that was my understanding from this motion, that it was a deferral on a decision on this request.
Yes.
So, and just to be clear with it, through you, your worship, the cost of the meter pit, the cost of the meter, the cost of everything else. Tony, from our discussions, I don't believe you had any issue with that. You were fine with that. It was more just the right to connect.
To a certain extent, yes. There was a meter pit installation, which was $800. I was doing the work myself, so there was a bunch of deductions.
Yeah, we wouldn't charge that, Tony. We wouldn't charge it if you were doing it yourself.
The meter pit itself, like whatever that comes to, is fine with me. It's something that's going to come up in the future anyway. The half of the 8150 was 4,075. That was already established. I wouldn't have to pay for that because of the proof of connection, which is very visible regardless of a water bill. So we're basically talking $4,075 and perhaps some labor and some other little things off that as well. But definitely the right to connect, the 8150 is something that's it's got to be looked at.
Well, the labor is going to be there, Tony, and there will be there through you, your worship. There will be people involved that will need to inspect and make sure. So the labor is going to be there.
But
Yeah, no, I'm not fighting over tens of hundreds of dollars here. So
the motion is to defer the 8150, that charge. Pardon me, the 4,000.
But Mayor Rob, my understanding was that it is, I'm sorry, the clerk has something she'd like to say.
No, well, I just want to clarify, and again, with the mover, that my understanding is the motion before council is to defer a decision on this request until the water policy review in the new year.
That's correct.
But to go forward with the meter pit, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And Councillor Keogh seconded that.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Is there more discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed? It is carried. So Tony, what will happen is we're going to look at this in the first quarter of the new year and then to look at that policy so council's sure about it. And then we'll be back in touch with you.
okay, thank you very much.
All right.
To all of
Thank you,
you.
Tony, for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Same to you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for that. Passing of accounts, compilation of accounts for November 26th to December 9th. Total amount of $625,045.97. And our treasurer, Tracy, where are you? Oh, there you are. All right.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is recommending the payment of the bills and accounts in the amount of $625,045.97.
To December 9th. Total amount of $625,045.97. And our treasurer, Tracy, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Somebody's got YouTube on.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is recommending the payment.
That's much better.
Okay, should I start again?
Yes, try it now.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. This report is recommending that the bills and accounts in the amount of $625,045.97 be paid. Are there any questions on the accounts payable?
Questions from council? No questions? Motion to move, pay the accounts? Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Nickel, all in favor? Carried. Easy one, Tracy. Thank you. Committee reports, Lake Huron Pipeline. Anything from, no? ABCA?
Meeting tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Blue Water? EDAC? Anything for EDAC? Local School Advisory? Recreation? Water Wastewater Committee? Policy Review Committee? Don't think we have anything there. Fire Committee?
No, nothing.
Budget Committee. We met December 3rd. The minutes are all there, and we're going to have our capital budget presented to us tonight and to have a look at it. And Huron Shores Transit Committee. Anything, Mike, that you'd like to speak on that?
No, just briefly, they went live with the service on Monday. It only goes through Parkhill and also Craig on Tuesdays and Thursdays. There'll be signage put up soon. We're just waiting for some locates, and the information has gone out through social media.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Correspondence, the Region of Peel request for a motion of support regarding property tax exemptions for veteran clubs. Receive and file. Okay, receive and file. That's all the correspondence we have. Other and urgent business. Confirmation of council meeting start times commencing January 21st to ensure consistency when moving between electronic and hybrid meetings. And Jackie, are you going to speak on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just so council is kept up to date, we do have the technology in our council chambers now to start hybrid meetings. So how we foresee pending COVID restrictions is all of council would begin attending the meeting in person. And there would be myself and the CAO, and then others would be into the meeting remotely. That would include delegations, public meetings, members of the public. However, we also talked about, as we're going through right now, is we never know, there can be times when we might start out hybrid and it has to flip to a fully electronic, potentially due to weather or due to further COVID restrictions. We had talked before that when we had electronic meetings, that start times for council were accommodated at 6 o'clock. And when we began our in-person, it would be 7. However, next week, I'm actually going to start circulating planning notices for the January meeting. So I just wanted clarification from council on their desire for a start time for our meeting starting in the new year, regardless of the venue type. It could be hybrid, it could be a combination of in-person or fully electronic. I would just like to establish and keep consistent with a start time that council is agreeable to. So whether it be the 6 p.m., but you'd have to keep in mind that if it was 6 p.m., it would be 6 p.m. in person, unless it changed and reverted to fully electronic, or the 7 o'clock. It's entirely council's decision. I just would like that direction, though.
All right. Which do you prefer? 6 or 7?
I'm
Councilor
6.
Keel.
I'm
Pardon me?
6 o'clock for me.
Okay. We're looking
6
for direction.
o'clock.
6? Okay. Adrian?
Mayor Rob, I'm comfortable with either time, whatever the majority of council decides.
Okay. Councilor Moyer, Gord, what do you think?
Yeah, whatever majority goes with, I can, I mean, 6, I could make it work.
6 you can make work? Andy?
Yeah, 6 o'clock is fine.
Who were Doreen?
6.
6. And Joan, you're saying 6? Okay. So it looks like 6 o'clock. It looks like 6 o'clock. And so that's whether we're in person now or whether we're online. The nice thing about the new hybrid, if councilors individually get an opportunity to go to the office to see what's being done there, even when we go back in person, our meetings will all be streamed now. There's a camera in place, and people will be able to be a delegation online, even when we're meeting in person, or public can watch online. And Mike's working with that logistics as far as if we get a large meeting. Doesn't mean people won't be able to come into the office or into the council chambers. They will, but there's an option there. And we will be streamed so that the public can see it.
That's great. Good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's people are used to being able to see this now, and it's more transparent. I think, Jackie, so 6 o'clock from going.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Deferred items are all in front of you. The list isn't as long as what it used to be. Department reports. Communication, sorry, from County Council. Adrian.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. We did have a fairly productive day at County Council yesterday, and we had a really good presentation from Mark Brown, the forestry manager, to talk about Phragmites control and the new bioherbicides and bio suggestions. So it was informative. Of course, when we look at bio introductions, it's always a little bit concerning as to what they're actually going to introduce. So it was good, but it's expensive. The herbicide applications were quite expensive. The economic strategy was approved, and there's another stimulating discussion on digitalized services, which I will refer to our CEO, Jonathan Graham, to update council on, since I'm sure that he's much more familiar with it than I am. Jonathan, would you?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, this was the second grant award cumulatively that the County of Middlesex and the lower tier municipalities was awarded through the modernization stream that was announced in late 2019 and awarded in 2020 before the pandemic. This one was strictly focused on a whole holistic review of digital services to be streamlined at each level. Some of the key points that were identified that we should be working together are asset management, service requests, work orders, budget preparation and process, council/committee meetings and agenda, development, planning, application, and process. As you're aware, the county does all our planning on our behalf. So really pushing for a streamlined approach that has people engaged in the system. They know where they're at and what they're getting into. External communication process and policy creation and maintenance. So that report and subject to council, the Perry Group who presented it, that was endorsed by County Council to fulfill the obligations of the grant. But it really gives us a streamlined approach of what we should be working together next. And I know you're probably all thinking, well, how far digitally can we go into our systems? That was brought up by a number of councillors of, it just seems to get exorbitant in terms of the cost for licensing fees and everything. But we do need some of these programs. It's just really reaffirming that we should be buying together and we should be leveraging the services at the IT level from county down, and we should be bulk purchasing. Also, that there's a lot of lessons learned that we can go through. I'm going to pick on facilities here today, and we're learning from Southwest Middlesex facilities complement for citywide and trying to streamline a tablet form that they've implemented a year ago. So it's exciting times, but it's a lot more to come in the coming years.
Thank you, Jonathan. I also want to just add a little bit on the economic strategy, and particularly because there's a great deal of focus on the agricultural industry and agritourism and the diversified agricultural opportunities. And Councillor Warwick, I thought, asked a really interesting question when some of the recommendations on the agricultural component of the strategy didn't always seem to be cohesive with the planning aspect of how policies are implemented currently. And so that is something that I think will have to be looked at. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Mayor Rob?
Well, yeah, some of their recommendations actually were outside the provincial policy at this time. At this time. So it isn't just the county or North Middlesex, it is the provincial policy, but there are some pretty interesting ideas there. And I think with the way the future is and the way it's going with farming, who can afford to start up buying a 100-acre farm anymore? To start a small acreage operation. So I think that I hope something will happen with that. I'm with you. That's
yeah.
Lean into that.
And she made reference to vertical farming, which I'm assuming is greenhouses and whatnot.
Yeah.
So on a smaller acreage, and those opportunities don't currently exist according to the policy. Now, I believe this strategy is probably on the county website. Will it not be?
Yes, that will be, and it certainly is on yesterday's agenda.
Yeah. So it's an interesting
read.
read.
The agendas, you'll get that whole. You can get that whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting read for anyone who's interested. And that's all. Thank you, Mayor Rob.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's it for county. Is there any questions from council on that? If not, we'll keep moving. And department reports. The award of the engineering and design for the fire EMS station. And Greg is here. Yeah, there you
are. Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, members of council, you have before you a recommendation to receive and approve the awarding of the contract for the engineering, design, and contract administration to G. Douglas Valley Limited, as specified in our RFP, in the amount of $240,543. Some background. We had significant interest in our RFP. We had 87 takers, which was issued back in late September. We received 13 submissions. All the submissions were reviewed and rated by staff based on a number of criteria. The ratings were made in isolation from each other and based on stipulated criteria that had been included in our RFP. The top 5 scoring submissions were further reviewed by members of the fire committee. G. Douglas Valley scored the highest, and Masrio Architects was ranked second by staff. The goal of our review panel was to recommend an architectural and engineering firm that was cost effective, but with a proven experience in designing a fire station for a paid on-call fire service in a small rural community such as ours. The recommended proponent has the most experience of all the proposals, having built fire stations of a similar scale in several communities throughout southwestern Ontario. Masrio Architects is the consultant for the new fire station being built in St. Mary's, and they have built fire stations of a similar scale, St. Mary's being similar in scope to our station. Middlesex London EMS's current lease expires in early 2022. It is our goal to have the new facility ready for occupancy at that time. And in order to achieve this, the architectural and engineering firm must have experience to move the project along, preferably in a similar setting, scale, and size as North Middlesex. In order to achieve this, the committee had to look past upfront costs and consider the experience and value of the proposals. And in this regard, staff is not recommending that we take the lowest bidder. G. Douglas Valley Limited, as the recommended proponent, is including 2,034 hours for its role in the project. The alternative firm, Masrio Architects, is including 1,532 at a price that is approximately $10,000 less. Any questions?
Questions? Councillor McClinchy, you have start.
Yeah, okay. You said 2,000 hours compared to 1,500. How do you justify that? Because how long ago, when was it they got the approval of putting those hours in? When was that? When did that start?
So, Chief, do you want me to give you a hint?
Sure.
So through the mayor, we put out a proposal, Councillor McClinchy, and we ask them to fill out what we call a time task matrix. So we don't delineate or tell them how many hours it's going to take. They come back to us and let us know what they expect the hours and level of service that they need to get this done. So there is variation amongst all 13 that we received. But what Chief just outlined was that there's, about 500-600 hours of effort difference between the two proponents.
Okay, because there's $10,000 difference. What was the criteria there to pick the top one? What was okay, what firm is it again? Valley, the one opposed to the Valley opposed to, who's the other guy?
Masri.
Yeah, so what was the difference there?
So you're asking what's the scoring? Are you asking the scoring criteria?
Yeah. And how important is that? I just want to put that forward.
Through your worship. So 40% of the final score was based on the price. A further 40% was based on the overall rating of the company. So that included manager's experience, team quality, resources, references, quality and professionalism of the response, and examples of prior experience for a project in small rural communities. And the final 20% of the score was determined based on the level of the proposed service, the contents and the particulars of the submission. And all of this was included in the RFP. They knew what they would be scored on.
So the RFP, is that the 240,000? Is that what you're talking about? Or is that the estimate of the building or that they're putting together?
That would be the cost for the architecture, the engineering, and contract administration for the design of the building.
For the design, which is 240,543, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Can I just intersect we've lost Mayor Rock for a moment. So if we're going to continue, I would ask that Deputy Mayor Cornelson maybe step in. I'm just trying to see where he is now. Oh, okay. We can wait for a moment to see if Brian's coming back in. He's just trying with his iPad to get connection again.
Yeah, but let's wait a minute.
There it looks like he's coming back in.
Yeah.
And we'll see. Am I back there now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me close up. I'm on a different. I completely froze up on my computer. Sorry, guys.
Your worship, we'll let you get settled in. Councillor Moore, you had a question, so we can keep the conversation going.
Yes, let's keep going. Yeah, it really wasn't a question. It was more of a comment on the, both of these firms when we met at the committee level. Both of these firms we determined were fairly equal. They both had done considerable projects that are in line with what we're looking for. We'd asked staff to check some references and see if there was any negative or positive feedback from any of the municipalities that they'd worked with. There really wasn't any clear consensus among the committee of these Valley or Marissa. This is when staff checked the references, this is who they came back with for the recommendation. So I think we have two good candidates here. I'm in favor of saving $10,000. The second choice of the staff was my first choice from the beginning. But I mean, we want to hear from everybody else here as well. So.
Okay, I had Councillor Hemming and then Councillor Keogh.
Yeah, when we took that tour to check all the fire halls and everything on that tour, I think there was about 5 of us went. Doran, you'll recall too, Alvinston, Masry's did the fire hall in Alvinston, I believe. Is that correct?
I don't.
That was not listed as one of their references.
Oh, I thought they were the one that did the one in Alvinston, and if that is correct, then I thought that was a good choice as well.
We didn't go to Alvinston. We went to Thorndale.
Yeah, Thorndale. Sorry about that. Yeah, it was in Thorndale we went to. They did that one, right, Masry?
The contracted engineering firm that Masry will use was involved in Thorndale.
They had design.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I confused on that, but yeah, and I was quite impressed with the setup. It wasn't top of the line bell whistles, but it was quite functional. I thought as alternative, and the committee looked at it and they say that they're pretty much neck and neck as far as their capabilities. So, and again, to copy what Gord's saying is, if we can save $10,000, especially in respect to all the money we're going to be spending, 10,000 here, 10,000 there, it adds up. So I would, that's my opinion on that. So.
Okay, Councillor Keogh next, and then Councillor Moyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just want to echo Councillor Moyer's sentiments there that at committee level, they were both neck and neck. And again, neither one had any discrepancy or negative results or reports on that. So when it comes down, I guess, to in which direction, personally, I think it should be. I think it should go to the financial purpose of it. And with 500 hours difference between Valley or Masry, that only works out to $20 an hour. And something just doesn't jive there, that at a professional level, there's a $20 an hour billing. So with that, I would like to go with the lesser of the two.
So with Masry, Councillor Moyer, you had your.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on the 10,000 there. In their initial bid, there's 10,000 savings, but if they go over those hours, there could be additional charges. So it is a gamble whether we will have that $10,000 savings or not. That being said, Valley could very well go over their 2,000 hour limit as well.
Through the mayor, Councillor Moore is correct, and the bill that we will receive will be in and around $100 an hour for those additional hours if they are utilized in either scenario. Just recognize that.
Jonathan, can I ask you then, do you believe that their 1,500 hour estimate is adequate?
I have no reason not to believe it. They're the professionals. They do the design. They do these things all the time. There's no reason for me not. I can't tell them that they can't do it in that time.
No. Okay. That's what I was wondering. Other comments? No other comments? You have a recommendation in front of you. What is your wish? we need a motion. And I'm hearing different things from councilors. So if you're not agreeing with the motion, or you're agreeing with the motion, or you have another motion, go ahead. Councilor Keogh.
I'd make the motion that it be awarded to Masri on price.
Okay, we need a seconder for that. Councilor McClinchy would second that. Any other discussion on that? All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Carried. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think they're both good firms, as you said. All right, so our next report is the building activity report, September to November 30th. And that's, who's doing that? Oh, Shannon's. How are you, Shannon?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Good evening. So yes, I'm here to present to you the building report from September 1st to November 30th. So that will take from the last report to up till the end of November. So as you can see from the report, the actual number of permits is down compared to last year. However, the estimated construction value that is noted on the permit applications is significantly higher, as are the building permit fees that were collected and the development charges that were collected. And so the jump there is because we issued the 22 unit development in Parkhill. So the fruits of everybody's labor getting to that point is now coming to, we're able to see the construction happening. So again, we're seeing kind of lower numbers as a result of COVID still. I know contractors are having a hard time getting supplies and materials. But again, our permit fees are still strong, as is the value of construction that people are putting out. And then just a little bit of an update from the Joint Building Services side. So Inspector Josh, he is physically in the North office Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. I'm in the North office as much as I can be on Tuesdays. I know Josh is also covering over in the North area on Fridays as well, because there's enough activity happening. And I'm available for anybody in North at any to either have a meeting via Zoom or phone calls. So we are seeing lots of activity. We have been in discussions as well with a couple of the builders for the new subdivision, and we should see some model homes being issued shortly for that. So that's my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Questions from council? Questions, Councilor McClinchy?
Shannon, when you say the North area, are you talking about, where are you really talking? When you said the North area?
I'm talking all of North Middlesex. So,
I was just wondering what you were talking about. The North area.
Sorry, all of North Middlesex. I apologize.
That's better.
Through your worship, you have to remember Shannon manages 3 municipalities, so
okay.
we're the North.
I know, but we're North Middlesex. Yeah, okay.
You're North Middlesex. I apologize.
Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Thank you. I'm assuming that the Adelaide Metcalf is middle, or are they center?
Well, they are the center. They're the middle. Yes, I apologize. I will refer to North Middlesex as North Middlesex going forward.
I think
we'll get used to your.
It's a very impressive report. It really is, in my opinion. You know, the construction value is certainly impressive, as is the development charges and even the fees collected. My question for you is, what about the agricultural industry aspect of it? Were there any huge or substantial agricultural buildings put up? And another part of my question, and then I'll pass it on, is the application for building permits process. Are we still doing that electronically, or do the applicants have a choice?
So agriculturally wise, we haven't seen any major barns being constructed. Most of the stuff on this report is residential. or like implement shed type construction. We haven't seen any major barns. There was one addition just outside of Park Hill, but the majority of what we're seeing is residential and accessory structures for both agricultural as well as residential. And your second question about the online. So we have stopped using the cloud permit for now, and we are using the software that's used for the taxation to issue the permits, because it gives us the ability to run all the reports we need to run without having to double enter the information. We do give people the option that if they would like to, if they are able to send their stuff electronically via email, we would be happy to accept it that way. However, so far people are still willing to physically drop off the applications. So we are still leaving that open and that option available. And again, I guess that'll depend on what happens with COVID. But again, if something happens that has to shut an office down or whatever that the case may be, we'll definitely work with the applicants to ensure that we're receiving their applications.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor McClinchy.
With the development charges, that increase, fill me in. Did we go back to the full price or are we still at the half? I can't remember what we did.
So this is still at the half.
Okay.
That was still at the half. It was 22 units. It brought in a substantial amount of money at the half. So
okay. Okay.
But that is a conversation for the new year. John.
Yeah.
I'd also like to just reaffirm that the 2019 DCs are also subject to the 50%. So you're seeing 50% in 2019 and 50% in 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shannon, and I guess Jonathan, I'll have to include you in on this as well. If my memory serves me correctly, that cloud process of filing electronically building permits, they were going to lengthen out our trial period. Is that correct?
I'll jump in, Shannon. Feel free if I missed something. Yeah, they did extend our contract. So,
and has it been corrected where it's been any more user friendly, or are they still working on that?
That one I will defer to Shannon, just so that we know this will be coming back to council somewhere around March. If we actually enter into the agreement, we extended our trial period by 6 months.
So we haven't seen any changes to the issues that we were having, like the double entry of the information, and then also the concerns that the public, like the general public, the one-offs were having. So again, as I said, most of the people who want to apply electronically are the bigger builders. So again, that's where we are more than willing to work with them and accept email applications. But I haven't seen or heard from Cloud Permit that they've made any significant changes to their software in order to fix the glitches that we were running into. So at this time, we're not seeing many people use it. We monitor it to make sure there's no applications coming in and nothing gets missed, but nobody's missing the fact that it's not there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Shannon? No other questions? We need a motion for the report. Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, we hope to make you very busy coming in the 2021.
You are. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. Okay, our next report is the Emergency Winter Management Service Memorandum of Understanding. The county dealt with this yesterday, and we passed this at the county level. So, Jonathan, you're going to speak on this.
Through your worship, members of council, the recommendation before you that the attached resolution regarding the Emergency Maintenance Service Memorandum of Understanding be approved by not by county council, by municipal council. My apology. I must have oversaw that. But regardless, the presentation before you, or the memorandum of understanding, is basically to allow our operators to come into our territory to do snow maintenance on our behalf, or we do it on their behalf. This is just really a COVID safe or stopgap. If we have the flu or the COVID go through our operations team and we need assistance, or someone else needs assistance from us. So I would ask you to consider this very much like mutual aid that is shared between the municipality, except for this will be at a base unit cost to either or from us or to somebody else. So is there any questions in this regard?
Questions from council on this? Go ahead, Councillor Moyer.
Just wondering, I agree with the policy. I think it's a good idea. Just wondering, has there been any, because I know all the roads departments are going to be busy. If you get a snowstorm, they're all going to be stretched for hours. Any thought to any private companies pushing snow?
Through your worship, that I have thought about that, but the legalities of how long that would take a third-party entity having to staff up. I'm certainly, if we have to come down to that, we'll go into the emergency reserve that this council approved last year for weather increments. But this is our first kick at it just in case scenario. There's just a little bit more legalities in terms of the quality that we could get from a third party. And I'm not suggesting that they wouldn't meet it. It's just, what are those expectations on the fly that get really tricky? So we felt that having this relationship with our neighbors was appropriate first. And if we're having issues with it, I would think the private sector is also having issues with it. So I am aware of it, and we're willing to come back to council if we need to do that appropriately in a private side.
Well, we haven't got much snow so far, so we're okay.
Yeah, so far so good. From the county side, Gord, they aren't really interested in private plowing. They would much prefer knowing who they have coming and helping out, whether it be us helping them on some of the roads or them helping us. It seems to be the preferred route. So any other questions on this? Councillor Nicol?
Yeah, so is that going to affect the time that some of the roads get done? For example, if they're doubling up coming across for the county roads, are they looking at some roads as referring to them as not as important anymore?
Through your worship, to answer your question, what is the governing factor through this is the minimum maintenance standards from the Highway Traffic Act. So that's why going with our neighbors, we all understand that. We have an obligation and due diligence to meet that standard. Doesn't matter pandemic or not. So we meet a threshold above that right now. But to answer your question, there is a risk to that. But jointly, and I believe the deputy mayor or the mayor can speak to this, every single municipality within the county is considering the exact same approach. So it's more of a communal effort that'll come together where, let's say North Middlesex has 5 staff members go down, and we're still going to do social distancing, people reporting to different garages, so we shouldn't lose all our staff at once. It would be that we would take a little bit from the county, a little bit from Lucan, or a little bit from Adelaide Medcalf, and vice versa, so that we can meet that minimum maintenance standard in ensuring that we have a drivable and safe road. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's a lot of speculation, but we do need to kind of start thinking proactively that this might be a reality.
Okay, Joan? Okay. Any other questions from council? No other questions. We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Moyer, moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor Hemming. All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we have, okay, our next one is a presentation of the draft 2021 capital budget. Tracy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so first of all, I'd like to thank all the staff and the 2021 Budget Committee. There was some great conversations with staff and at the committee level to prepare this budget for council. And just a review of how we start the budget process with our different plans that we have in place, community input, health and safety. We work together with senior management and operations staff, which we bring to the budget committee and then on for council approval. And I just have left this slide in just to remind council about the deadlines that we have up and coming with our asset management plans. We've got 2 big hurdles to get finished before in the next couple years. And just kind of a listing of where we're proposing the spending comes from this year. We're using debt, gas tax, vibrancy funds, development charges, the existing working capital reserve, and the existing vehicle and equipment reserves, and then tax levy, which is at 75% of the 2020 approved tax levy for capital purposes. And the full amount of the capital is $10,328,500, and from that, $1 million is coming from the federal gas tax, 3.25 from future debt, 992,370 from the tax levy, which I said is 75% of the 2020 tax levy. We have a tiny bit coming from development, and the other $5 million is from reserves. And those will be broken out in the following slides. So I've kind of laid this budget out a little different than you're used to seeing. I've laid it out according to asset classes as opposed to by department, so that when you're looking at vehicles or equipment, we're doing all the vehicles and equipment, not bouncing around from department to department. So the first area is the administration capital projects, and we're looking at the official plan update and the development charge update. And those funding sources are $35,000 from tax levy and $35,000 from the future development charges. Are there any questions on either one of these 2 capital projects?
Do you want questions now, or do you want to go through the projects and come back?
Whichever's easiest. If you're going to, it'd probably be easier to do it as we do it, because if we have to adjust the recommendation or the amounts,
Okay,
it's council.
So because we have a shared screen, if you have questions, you're going to have to speak up.
I have one on the development charges.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is, we're looking for Watson's to do another development charge consultation for us, is that right? For $35,000?
Through your worship, to Councillor Moyer, this proposal is just in terms of the development charges component of this, we're trying to let you know what we are getting ready for. This is a proposed project that will be funded completely through the development charges application of the process itself. Are we going straight to Watson? We don't know that yet. We just want to be in a position that if we need to consider this in 2021, that we are earmarking the project and the process. As you can see through Shannon's report previously, we left some monies on the table that we think is warranted, that we should be having a dialogue with council in 2021 later on in the year. If we have a flurry of development come in, which we are hopeful for, that we are sustaining our infrastructure appropriately, because through the Development Charges Act, whatever we leave in terms of contribution, it needs to be funded through taxation. So we just want to be able to be prepared. And I'm taking council's lead on this one. When you get Shannon's reports more often next year and you say, wait, this is a lot, you can say to staff, go back and start this process again. So that's all it is. We want to take your lead on it, but we need to have it there.
Okay, well, I agree. We probably do need to have a conversation on the development charge again. I just $35,000 for someone to tell us that we need to raise our development charges. I don't know. I have problems with these consultants telling us what we already know.
Through your worship, again, again, we can have the dialogue as we move ahead. Our development charges actually don't lapse until 2023.
Exactly.
So it isn't a full report. It's more of an addendum to the report. I think 35 is a little high as well, but we might be able to do a lot of this report or background study on the staffing front, and rather we just need that pooling resource that it doesn't have to be Watson, but a third-party consultant could offer us, because there's a landscape review that's required for development charges to be considered. It's not just North Middlesex individual needs. They do a comparison with all the other municipalities. So if we can farm just that component out and complement it internally, we can talk about how that would roll out. But again, we just want to be poised for the conversation.
Okay.
And I do know your discourse for having someone come in and tell us how to do things differently when we kind of already know the answer. So we'll watch that, and I'll take on that challenge.
Jonathan, just a comment on that, Jonathan. We can have that conversation just ourselves on our current charges, because we're at 50%. We can move with what we already have.
Yes, the only thing that we will have to do by the legislation is the 60-day appeal process, and receiving information that way. I'm not going to lie, the developers we've been talking to, they like it. Of course they like it. They're asking us even now, when is it going to change? Because they know it's going to change eventually. But that's really council's direction to staff on when do you want to pull that trigger for the discussion. So we could fall within that 30 or the 60-day appeal period and still have a development charges that lapse in 2023. The only downside is that we cannot incorporate some of the larger scale capital projects that should be funded through DCs, because that requires a whole review again. So again, just want to make sure that we're ready for the conversation.
Okay, but the first conversation would be talking about our existing, correct?
We can do that. We can piecemeal it existing or tying it to the projects if that's what council desires.
Okay, all right. I think we can carry on from this. Any other questions on this?
I just want to mention that this study is being funded from development charges, so it's not going to affect any of our reserves or our tax levy. So.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, so next we move on to land improvements. So that is the Parkhill splash pad upgrade and the meter pit installations. And the meter pit installations are coming from the water reserve, and we funded the splash pad from the vibrancy fund, parkland reserve, and from the existing working capital. Is there any questions on either one of those?
I'll speak up again.
Yep, go ahead, Gordon.
I'm just going to say I'm sorry right at the start here to everybody.
No, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, with the splash pad. Has there been any conversation along the lines of some community involvement of that again, similar to the Nairn rink? Just to get the community involved in some of the fundraising for the improvements of that? We did do some upgrades on that a few years back. And it's, we're spending a lot of money here in the very near future in the municipality. And
Brandon, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. So through the mayor to Councillor Moyer, my plan with this project is to take it to the rec committee in early 2021. I've got a breakdown of features and basically what those features cost. Basically go through the analysis with them of what the community survey presented to us. This was one of the common projects. I believe 27 respondents said that they would like to see an upgrade to the Parkhill splash pad. That was by far the most common request. There is room to make this a smaller project if that's what the committee deems fit. But it is something that I would like to go through the committee with and through the whole design process of it, and have them ultimately have input from community members and go forth that way.
Okay, I guess my concern is when we get these large numbers put in the budget, what we hear all the time is, well, it's in the budget, we can spend it. Whereas, I mean, we can save as well, you know, it's that's
And
my concern.
I'm very aware of that as well. We basically took the 3/4 ground number. They gave us 4 different prices. We took the third one as we felt it was probably the most value and service for the money. But again, we can evaluate that through the Recreation Committee. And if we deem that some of the features are unneeded, then by all means.
Okay. Mike, did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, I was just through your worship to Councillor Moyer. Gord, I just want to be clear, were you suggesting like community fundraising in that respect and contributions from the community towards this project?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's a valid discussion that we can have at the Parks and Rec Committee. Although if we want to slate it, we should budget for the full amount. And just to be clear, some of these are coming from community vibrancy. So it wouldn't go against the taxpayer dollar, but we could discuss that strategy early in the new year. But I think we should set aside the money regardless and have those discussions in tandem, Gord. But I do agree with you. If we can get community buy-in, and all these projects are perfect kind of projects for service clubs, you know, like the Lions and the Optimists. So I do agree with you in that respect.
All right, Gord. Other questions? Other questions on these items? No other? Okay, Tracy, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so we move on to infrastructure. So under infrastructure, we have gravel roads, which is Neil Road to Prince William and Brinsley to McGuire, the tar and chip program in Carlisle, the guardrail program, the culvert program, the Parkhill Main Street engineering and design, for the underground, and the Elsa Craig water main extension, which will be from the tower to the north edge. This funding is $450,000 from water reserve, $35,000 from wastewater, $275,000 from the tax levy, and $113,000 from the current working capital reserve. Are there any questions on these, on the infrastructure projects?
Questions from council on this?
Councillor McClinchy has a question, Your Worship.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Neil Road was really in bad shape this year, whatever, and maybe a year before that. So is it just going to be putting gravel back on that again, or are they looking at some other mechanism to, when you talk about putting gravel all the time versus tar and chip, how does that outweigh each other, or is it?
So this is a different program, Doreen. Jonathan, do you want to speak on that?
Through Your Worship, we've actually been, in my opinion, have been improving the quality of Neil Road. I don't get nearly as many complaints on Neil Road. Councillor Moore, you can chime in. I don't know, you drive it a little bit more than I do, but I think the program that we're putting in place has worked. This is finishing it off. So right now, what we did in the last 2 years is we go down and reestablish tile drain within the road allowance to allow it to drain. But when we do that, we end up flipping the gravel road in the crown almost, so we have to reinstate it. So it's strictly related to gravel road in terms of Neil Road, and that's finishing it off. Carlisle is a tar and chip. We did a survey in 2020 asking the residents of Carlisle what they would like to see in terms of hard surface treatment. It went before the budget committee. Overwhelmingly, about 50, 55, 60% of the residents surveyed, they'd like to see some sort of hard top applied to it. And the budget committee felt it warranted to apply tar and chip to that effect. So 2 different applications, 2 different densities. Carlisle's got, you know, a number of homes in the local area, 55, 60. So we're kind of recognizing an urban cluster, but Neil Road is strictly keep going with the existing program that we have for the tiling and the reestablishment of the crown. This will be the end of Neil Road for the gravel road treatment, and that's why we're shifting off to the side a little bit. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one I believe would be for Jonathan Lattman. and that's the 450,000 come out of water reserve. Is that for the water line to go from the tower to the north edge of town, or is that just for engineering of that project?
What's proposed through your worship, what's proposed to use just the engineering and design to get from the tower to basically Main Street or to the north edge of town.
So 450,000?
No, it's not 450,000.
Sorry, through you, your worship, that's the combined projects, the 450 from the water. Jonathan has 350 for the engineering for the main Parkhill Main Street underground, and he has 300 for the Parkhill Main Street, 150 for the water tower. So the balances that you're seeing is the total that will come out of the water reserve for Jonathan's water jobs.
Okay. My other question is for our Director of Operations, if I may, Mr. Mayor. And that is, you're talking gravel roads, Brinsley to McGuire, but I'm not really sure how the Brinsley meets McGuire. Which road are you talking about here? Do you remember? Or is it Brinsley gravel road maybe, or what?
It is the Brinsley gravel road. Just outside the Lurie shop there. Through the sheets that we gave you, I gave you a little bit of a map that shows the section that we're going to go, or that we're proposing to do today.
That's all. Thank you.
Other questions on this?
Sorry, through your worship, it's a Sobel drive between Brinsley and McGuire.
Yeah, okay. All right. Other questions on this? I know our guardrail program and our culvert program, that's just the budget we have to do those projects. It's not identified specific culvert.
That's correct, through your worship. It really keeps us, if we keep them open, it allows us when we do these larger projects on the road that we can button them up after we do some treatment and widen or shorten up more often than widen.
All right. Okay. Other questions on this? No, go ahead, Tracy.
All right, I'll do vehicles and equipment all together, so we're not bouncing back and forth, but the two vehicles recommended for replacement are the Fire Chief's 2011 pickup and the wastewater 2013 pickup, and those are both coming from the vehicle and equipment reserve. And then the equipment is the arena compressor replacement, a 72-inch diesel zero-turn lawnmower, an hydraulic extrication tool, 2002 3-point tractor replacement, and the Elsa Craig wastewater treatment plant skate upgrade. And those are split between the vehicle and equipment reserve and the wastewater reserve.
Okay, questions on that?
If I may, your worship, before we go to the council, the 3-point tractor replacement, our manager of operations, Brad Davies, has done a lot of work in trying to figure out what's wrong with the existing tractor, and we think we found it. So we would still request that it be considered through the budget process. It is over our procurement. Within our procurement policy, this would still come before council if the repair isn't actually what we thought, but we believe that we've been able to identify the issue and it will be repaired and serviceable. So we'll just earmark it, and at the end, if we don't use those funds, again, council approval at the end, and for the tender award, if we do get it, it'll just be a journal entry back to the reserve.
Okay, and just a note on that, Jonathan, when Brad came to the committee, the budget committee on that, he identified that he likes the tractor we have, but it was losing coolant and they had to find what was going on. They were having trouble finding it, correct?
He was chasing it down for months and we just couldn't figure it out. So he thinks he has now. So like I said, we still have to implement the repair, see if it performs, but again, kind of similar to the DC studies, if we get stuck halfway through the year, I want to be able to be earmarked and come back to council appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Questions from council on this stuff? Councillor Moyer, and then Councillor McClinchy.
Yeah, I get let's start with the pickups, I guess. Was there any thought given to, do they really need full-size pickups, I guess, say the building officials and the fire chief? You know, you got the 4 small all-wheel drive escapes or RAV4s. They're in the 30 to 35,000 range. Cheaper to maintain, cheaper to operate. So I'm just wondering, do we really need the full-size pickups, and then the ones that are there, maybe we can shove down into some of the rec and some of the areas that aren't used that much. I know we're looking at 179,000 kilometers on some of these and saying that's high mileage. It's not really. I mean, and I think your own cars have probably got more miles on it than that. So,
Okay.
And I'm just a little concerned that we have quite a fleet of pickups there now. The other ones, I'll just continue on, and I'm going to defer this one to John on the mower. I agree, diesel is probably a good idea for that. My main concern with this, as well as what it was on tractor, that is the maintenance of them begin with. The diesel can run a long time, but the rest of the machine has to be maintained and operated properly as well. So I just, are we spending $30,000 and then going to have to replace it in 3 years, the same as if it was a $15,000 machine?
So Gord, let's start with the pickup. I think Jonathan Graham will speak on that, and then Brandon can speak on the lawnmower. Okay.
Through your worship, originally tabled at the budget committee was 4 pickup trucks, or they were identified. We understand and completely rationale through the process that 4 is unreasonable. So we're shifting. Actually, the fire chief is being proposed to be replaced, and the wastewater truck that Glenn Bullock used to drive is proposed to be replaced as well. Through the discussion and refinement, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong here, we actually settled on an F-150 for both 4-wheel drive. Greg's truck, because of what he does, requires a little bit more, I don't want to use finesse because we're not going to put as many stickers on it, but it needs a little bit more add-ons in terms of the lighting and the radios and stuff. So we had to consider that as we went through the process as well. So we're shifting some other needs that historically we would renew every 5 years. We're pushing those away, those other 2, and they'll be considered in future. So we are considering smaller trucks, and we did have a price indicated to us around that range. We're hoping by bundling them together and tendering, we'll actually get a reduced cost.
So I think, though, Jonathan, in fairness to Gord's question, was, do they need to be pickups, or would a small SUV work?
Okay, my apologies. I didn't hear that part.
Correct. That's what you're
right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I would know, knowing what Jonathan Lampman does and what Greg does, I think a pickup truck is fully warranted in that regard. It's just a utility jackknife that we need to leverage sometimes, and carrying around meters and meter pits in the back of the truck. You'll need access to that, would you not, John?
Yeah, through your worship, the main justification for a pickup truck, honestly, wastewater, if it's a pickup truck, it just needs to be all-wheel drive, but the drainage aspect of it. So our new drainage superintendent, Joanne Souther, entering fields and the like, wouldn't be nice to have a little clearance in 4-wheel drive. That's where the F-150 down from the 250, that was the justification for that in my mind. But all-wheel drive is a must, absolutely. Just meter reading in the snow and going through mud and stuff like that. But wastewater, we could work with less.
No, I understand with your department. Yeah, I agree. You need a pickup. I was thinking more the building official and the fire chief, whether they really do need a full-size pickup or an SUV would work for that.
Yeah. So the building officials isn't being changed.
No,
no, but that is a pickup that could be,
correct.
That could be handed down. Yeah.
Through your worship, that's actually going to go in 2021. I'm talking with Morgan. That's a complement that's going to be housed at Adelaide Metcalf. So we're going to get rid of that asset as it would be, because the holder of the agreement and the holder of the service model is Adelaide Metcalf, and that truck is going to be transferred over to them. So it'll be their responsibility.
Okay. But you're still asking about the fire chief's truck? Is that vehicle?
It's just a question. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a fair question.
Councillor Moyer, through the mayor, the use for the truck is to carry contaminated equipment and gear, which shouldn't be put in the cab of a personal vehicle or an SUV in this case. It should be kept separate because it is off-gassing, and we're learning that the gases that are coming out of that gear and that equipment is potentially carcinogenic. So we're trying to keep that as separate from personnel as possible.
I thought we were, the pickup that you have now, I thought that one was handed down to handle.
That's going to become what we're going to carry the cylinders in, so we can transport them to scenes and to be refilled.
My apologies, Your Worship. I believe we were actually going to divest that truck.
Right.
I think that's where the committee stood on that.
Yes, and I'm looking at the rest of the committee and they're nodding their heads
That's
as
right.
well. Thank you. Just a minute, Deputy Mayor. There was another question from Councillor Moyer, and that's to Brandon on the diesel lawnmower. And then I'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
Through Mayor Ropp to Councillor Moyer, with regards to maintenance on the moors, we do believe that that's very important. I think one of the things that happened last year when we actually had our full-time operators cutting grass was that they actually took care of the equipment a lot more than when students would typically hop on and just rip around. And this year we're looking at having our operators cut grass again and keeping that as the trend moving forward. So we do identify that the level of care with regards to maintenance may not have been there in the past, but it's definitely something we are looking forward to improving. And I think with that, we're looking at 10 years for this lawnmower. That's my goal, is to get 10 years or 4,500 hours on the machine before it becomes a replaceable machine. Whereas our gas ones, even if perfectly maintained, they say it will die in 2,000 hours. That's what a gas mower is. And they say a perfectly maintained diesel, 6,000 hours you can get. So the 3 times life expectancy, while it is a jump at the start, I think that graph that Tracy sent out today kind of shows just at about the 5-year mark, the cost actually starts to shift in diesel's favor. And it stays there permanently as long as we continuously maintain and then stay with type of mower.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just the maintenance part of it that is, and yeah, it'd be nice to have a schedule that you're, every 100 hours you're changing the oil and 10 hours you're greasing the deck or whatever, I guess whatever you come up with. So, okay, thanks, Brandon.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Jonathan, could you just refresh my memory? What decision we come to with the bylaw truck? Because it's no longer being used, is it?
Through your worship, it is currently complemented in the fleet with facilities to allow social distancing, and it's kind of become our cleaning mobile hub, correct, Brandon? It's where we just kind of have everything in a central location and we can get it around. So we could examine that, but right now there is a need, and unfortunately COVID's not going anywhere. So it's something that we're going to need at least in 2021 for some period of time. We can look back at that. When we contracted out to MEU, my intention was to divest it or cycle it through and have something else go out. But we just got stuck with the pandemic and needed to bring it into complement.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I'd also like to add that citywide, a component of our asset management plan, we will be rolling into an electronic maintenance format, work order system. So we're not going to be forgetting it. It's on a piece of paper. And the benefit that that program also offers is it goes directly back to the financial component of that improvement. And it ties into our asset management plan of how long we can extend some of our services or when it's up for renewal.
Okay. So the idea was that we could possibly eliminate 2 trucks in our fleet. We are going to be eliminating one when one goes to Adelaide, but the other one, as you said, is right now we have to hold on to it for COVID. Hopefully when that ends, we can get rid of another one. So is there other questions from council on this, on these, not on these projects? Okay, Tracy, go ahead.
All right, so our last section is facilities, and a lot of these are not going to be much of a surprise to council. We've got the Parkhill Fire EMS building, the Parkhill Reservoir Engineering and Design, the Elsa Craig Water Tower construction, West Williams Pumping Station upgrade, and the Parkhill Wastewater Treatment Plant. And there's a multitude of funding on this, on these. 2.185 coming from the current working capital, 125,000 coming from the community vibrancy fund. That is for the fire hall. 689,630 from the facility reserve, 320,000 from the water reserve, 682,370 from the tax levy, which is also the fire hall. 3.25 is the future debt, and 1 million is the gas tax funding, which we're going to use for the wastewater treatment plant. Are there any questions on these?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll have questions on these. Questions from council.
Yeah.
Who wants to start? Gord, Councillor Moyer, and then Councillor McClinchy.
On the Park Hill Reservoir engineering and design, is that the cost of design of the new plant?
Through your worship, no. We've allocated $150,000 to look at the process control, automation, PLCs, pumps, process piping, instruments.
That's on
Okay,
the water
so-
reservoir, Gord.
Pardon me?
That's on the water reservoir.
Yes, in Park Hill.
That's not on the wastewater
Oh, okay,
treatment.
sorry,
It's on the water
okay.
reservoir.
No.
So that's yeah, okay. So we did do some work on that reservoir there a year ago, and this is just the upgrade. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Other questions? Councillor McClinchy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I sure did. For the Park Hill Fire EMS building, is that the 3,250,000 I'm looking at as a figure, or what?
It's in there as 3.9. 300,000 of it has already been approved in the 2020 capital.
300,000, you said?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
was approved in 2020 to get started with the site preparation, engineering, and then the balance is being proposed for this budget.
Okay, so we're talking about future debt user fees. Is that
There's no future debt on the fire hall. That's the future debt is only on the water tower.
Okay, so how much is this Park Hill Fire EMS building estimated at? Or is it there on paper somewhere?
So
or do we know that?
It's on your detail sheets. It's right now it's 3.9 million. And as I said, 300,000 was approved in 2020. So this go around for 2021, it's 3.6 million 50,000.
How do we justify that?
Through your worship.
Yes. Go ahead.
Not all of that money is going to the fire hall. So the fire hall makes up about 2/3 of that cost, and then the EMS building makes up another third of that cost. So it's not all just fire hall. And the EMS will provide rent to the municipality to utilize the EMS portion of the building.
Provide rent. But we as a municipality have to put it up there, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Like we got a huge increase in the water rates and stuff. Then we're going to have one big increase when it comes to the Park Hill Fire EMS building. How are people going to ever pay for this stuff? Like, really? Like how much?
There isn't an increase to anyone on the fire and EMS building. That is being funded through our reserves. Some is through taxation, but there is not a debt going to be owing on that building. Correct, Tracy? I'll let you carry on.
Yes, we've worked it out so there's no debt for the building.
We're using our reserves.
We're using our existing reserves, yeah.
So are you saying that there's $3 million in reserves?
We're proposing taking 2.1 million from the reserves, yes.
Okay, now are there designs already on this proposed fire hall yet? Is there designs out there?
That's what Greg's report earlier will be the start of that process. I believe that the engineers you picked tonight, Jonathan or Greg, that they will be coming up with the design, working with the committee, I believe. But as John Lampman pointed out, the EMS is kind of already there. They've told us what they have to have. We know pretty much what that portion is going to cost us. And we will get that money back through the rent from the EMS. which we probably will be bring a report where a portion will pay for a portion of the operating expenses and a portion will go back to pay back the reserve. But that will all happen when we finally get them in there and we start collecting rent. So.
Okay, so when this design is finished, does that come before council for approval? Or is that just the committee making that recommendation and council?
So during council will make the final decision on it. Council, it's going to go to the committee. They're working through the committee, the fire committee, but it absolutely comes to council for the final decision. But in the last term of council, we agreed to build a EMS station. If you remember in the last term.
Yeah.
And that has to be completed by April of 2022. But we don't have the exact cost yet of this. This is just a budgeted estimated amount. And committee will be working with the fire committee, with the fire chief and deputy chief on coming up to those costs and seeing what they can do with those costs. So there is no firm cost on the buildings yet. This is strictly a budgeting to get so that we can carry on.
I understand. Because when we went on the tours, I didn't see those figures. But anyhow, but they didn't have
the figures were higher. They were when we went to Chelmsford and Malahide, it was scary.
Well, they had the Taj Mahal in the one, so
yeah. Councillor Hemming, go ahead.
Do we know how much what the rent will be from the EM portion of the building?
We have a pretty good idea, and I don't want to give a figure at this time because I'd be speaking from the wrong side. I'd be speaking from the authority, and I don't want to do that right now. But yeah, we will know very soon what that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll help offset.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That'll all be information that council will have.
Yeah. Yes.
And the committee will get that information.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. And we've streamed this budget for the building so that we're not affecting the tax levy this year very much. Like, we're trying to use the reserves we have so that we're not doing a big jump in our tax levy. We're trying to keep it status quo. So.
Okay.
Tracy, you said this year. When you mean 2020?
2021.
Oh.
So that's the reason that's the reason we're using a lot of reserves, because I'm not going to put 2 million to the tax levy because that would be so.
Yeah, I got it.
Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, okay. And going back to the issue about the reserves, we're not depleting our reserves down to a critical point or anything, eh? That's all I'm concerned about.
No, there is a graph at the back of your budget binders that shows where we will be. It's actually at the end of my presentation as well, where these jobs are going to put us. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this or? Okay. No. All right. Carry on, Tracy.
Oh, and as promised, here are the the reserve balances. So if we approve everything as presented to you tonight, the ending balance is on your far right. These are just guesstimates of how much estimated expenses are going to come out in 2020 and the proposed reserve contributions in 2021 from the operating budget. The ending balance of the working capital shows a small negative, but that's only if we spend everything all at once, which we won't. So there's no worry there. And also there is, I'm going to bring to council a report where the fire truck from the new fire truck that will be coming the end of next year, I believe, is actually funded from the working capital. That's why it shows 1.4 coming out of it. I'm going to suggest it comes out of the vehicle and equipment reserve because there's room in it, and leave more in our working capital. The water and wastewater shows a low balance, but I don't know what money is going to go in from Jonathan's operating at this point. So there will be money going into Jonathan's reserves when I finish up his operating budget. Are there any questions on the reserve balances?
All right, questions from council?
No questions, Mayor Rob.
No questions? Is that it, Tracy?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions from council overall on the budget as presented?
Just on your capital funding, Tracy, or your future debt. So I guess that's for the Elsa Craig Water Tower. So that would be, that's all borrowed money?
Yes, that will be through a loan through infrastructure Ontario. So.
Okay.
Through your worship, and although I can't predict how and when we'll engage with Infrastructure Ontario, there's a lot of moving timelines in terms of the tender documents, but their interest rates have drastically changed in the last year. And Mayor Romp and I have been kind of keeping in tune with this. The first time we engaged them almost 2 years ago, I believe it was at 3.25%, and now they're hovering around 0.65 without us even negotiating. So that barring it's a tough negotiation, but there is a little bit of wiggle room there. And the Bank of Canada is demonstrating that they're looking for shovel-ready situations that we're presenting. So there is that debt curve ratio that we'll be projecting when we move into the next phase of this will change drastically in terms of what we originally were projecting.
The other thing that figured on that, Gord, if I can, is grants. There's no grants into this because we don't have it in our hand yet, so we can't budget it that way.
That's right.
But that certainly is part of that whole equation. It's an important part of the.
Well, that was going to be my next question was, with reserves, I mean, there's a balance there of what we can borrow for and having money in our reserves, and are we getting any money from our reserves? Like, is there I know it's small as well, probably, but what's the balance of those two? As opposed to using your reserves or borrowing, like what would the...
Well, the reason that the water tower and the wastewater treatment plant would be more considered for a debt was because it's a separate user fee based program. The reserves that we have in place right now are reserves that were accumulated from tax levy. So, and the reason for Jonathan's water rates is to build up his reserve because he has nothing there right now for his future infrastructure needs. So
Right, but I guess my question is, if we have, say you have $2 million in reserves, you got that $2 million sitting in the bank, sitting somewhere?
Yeah.
Is that making, what is that making? 1 point?
It's very low right now because of COVID. Everything's gone down, obviously.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking, whether it was, are you better at this time maybe to take on more debt at the lower interest rate?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's where we're heading. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? No other questions? Okay, so what's council's wish? We do have a recommendation in front of us. We know we're approving 75%, correct? Because that motion was made earlier.
Yes.
We're approving 75% of the capital. What is council's wish here tonight? And first of all, I want to thank council for your patience. I do not doing it's online. I appreciate everyone's effort and staff's effort in this. It is a tough way to do a budget, doing it online and doing it by Zoom. But I think the questions have been great questions. And but so, what is council's wish? Councilor Hemming, did you? Or were you just stretching? Sorry, you were stretching.
Yeah.
Councilor Nickel.
I would recommend that we accept as it was proposed to this evening.
Okay. We have a mover, a seconder. Councilor Moyer, you're seconding it?
Yep.
Discussion on it? No discussion? All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Carried, thank you. Thanks, Tracy, and to all staff for that. And to the committee, I want to thank the budget committee for their efforts and that we had very good conversations during the process. And I look forward to when we do the operating as well. All right, so reading of the bylaws.
So the only bylaw this evening is your confirming bylaw, and we are looking for first and second reading.
First and second. Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried.
And third and final.
Councillor Moyer, Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we need to go into closed, correct?
That is correct. So the only thing I would just like to mention is for the benefit of the live stream is should there be any recommendations that result from the closed meeting that come to open meeting, they will be duly recorded in the draft minutes and presented for council's consideration at the next council meeting as usual.
Okay, so we're going to have a brief recess, but I want a motion to move into closed, and it's for the approval of the minutes for 2020, January 15th, December 5th and 19th, March 4th to 16th, November 18th. And the second issue is labor relations or employee negotiations as staffing report. So I need that motion. Councillor McClinchy, second by Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried. So we're just having a short break, correct?
Yes, we're just going to close down the live stream and reissue the running the meeting from the technology.